Hi, this is Rick from For Community, creating community spaces so you can connect with others and also with God. My very first short-term mission trip that I led with a church group was to a First Nations community in northern Quebec. I was there for a week, and a week isn't such a long time for a single guy, but when I went, I was a married guy with two very young children at the time, and I had never spent a night away from my kids at this point, so it was a really big deal for me. It was a bigger deal for my daughter. She was just at the place where she was beginning to kind of talk, and yet still not really able to clearly communicate, but she was understanding most of what she was hearing, but not all of it. So she wasn't sure where I had disappeared to, and she wasn't old enough yet to explain how she was feeling. So she kind of felt the silent kind of sad, the kind of sad that makes you feel like you're looking at life through a window from inside a soundproof room that's locked from the outside. She was that kind of sad. A week later, I was back at home. My daughter was napping in my bed, so I laid down beside her to see how close she was to waking up, and thankfully her eyes popped open and she rolled over and looked at me, and she put her thumb in her mouth and she rolled back over, and tears were welling up in her eyes. She didn't know what to communicate, and she just blinking like, did I really see that? And then she rolled back over to look at me again, and she was crying, and we hugged. It was such a sweet moment that we had as she was expressing the grief and the relief that I had come back. And that moment has never happened again. Now, when I come home, I walk into the house, and my now teenage daughter is completely unaffected by my return, unless I come home with a Boston cream donut. What about you? Can you think of a moment that was really sad for you or your child, and then it ended up all okay? If you're watching with someone, why not pause the video and share your stories with each other? This video is based on my interpretation of Psalm chapter 6. To me, it looks like David may have done something to get himself into hot water, and now it looks like he's truly grieving what has happened. Psalm chapter 6, verses 1 through 10. O Lord, don't rebuke me in your anger or discipline me in your rage. Have compassion on me, Lord, for I am weak. Heal me, Lord, for my bones are in agony. I am sick at heart. How long, O Lord, until you restore me? Return, O Lord, and rescue me. Save me because of your unfailing love. For the dead do not remember you. Who can praise you from the grave? I am worn out from sobbing. All night I flood my bed with weeping, drenching it with my tears. My vision is blurred by grief. My eyes are worn out because of all my enemies. Go away, all you who do evil, for the Lord has heard my weeping. The Lord has heard my plea. The Lord will answer my prayer. May all my enemies be disgraced and terrified. May they suddenly turn back in shame.
Hello, would you like anything else with your croissant?
Yes, coffee, please.
Coming right up. Oh, careful, the coffee's hot.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Have you watched the For Community video yet?
No.
Well, make sure you look in the background for all the cool characters. And kids, don't forget to watch this week's episode of Connect HQ.
Okay. The link to the Connect HQ video is found in the description.
Here's the point I'd like to make in this video. Grief can return us to spiritual and mental health. To be totally honest, I don't know the context of this psalm. I'm not sure anybody really does. In the text, we see David lamenting over something that he's done, requesting God not to rebuke him or act out in rage. We also see a reference near the end to him being oppressed by enemies. So I think it's very possible that this psalm may be about a time when David did something wrong, suffered some kind of military defeats as a result of it, and now is grieving, asking for God's forgiveness and also for God's help. Beyond that, though, I see something that I haven't seen before. I see 4 of the 7 stages of grief throughout this psalm. Now, typically, grief may be known by its 5 stages. I like to use a 7-stage model of grief, and 4 of the 7 stages are found in this psalm. So I want to share with you 2 points around grief. How we can embrace grief to first return to spiritual health, and second, to return to mental health. Here's my first point about grief. Grieving restores spiritual health. The text says, "Have compassion on me, Lord, for I am weak. My bones are in agony." So to me, it looks like David is really remorseful about what he's done. I mean, whatever it was that he has done. Now, I don't really need to know what he's done because I get the idea. I've done things that are wrong. I've done things that I've regretted. Some of the choices that I've made have ended relationships or got me in hot water, maybe at a job, or changed part of my life. I get this. David is grieving. I can understand what that grief kind of looks like. He's lost the previous experience that he had, maybe when he was walking with God in good relationship, and he's missing that, and now he just feels like he's grieving, and he's sad, and he's mourning, and David's grieving is really healthy. Grieving is healthy. When I was a teenager, I had a friend who got in trouble. Maybe got in trouble a little too much. And while she was in trouble, because she had done something wrong, suffering the consequences, she prayed like she had never prayed before. And it sticks in my mind because of how passionate this prayer was and how loud this prayer was. Her prayer went something like this: God, I can't believe I'm getting in trouble. The other people did way worse than me. Those other people are really the evil ones, not me. And why don't you get those people in trouble? I don't deserve this. And why don't you get my parents in trouble? And why do you get everybody else in trouble? I'm the good guy here. And it went on and on just like that. So passionate and so loud and so totally unhelpful. It didn't do anything to help her friendship with God. It didn't do anything to help her relationship with the people that she had sinned against, if I could say that. It didn't do anything to create positive change. It was just a whole lot of denial and stuckness. Grief, real grief, can be healthy because it's a process that starts us heading toward spiritual health. When we recognize that we've done something wrong, something that has a negative effect on our friendship with God, on our connection with God, if we choose grief, then we're choosing the path that heads toward deepening of relationship. And it's avoiding the path of regression. So here's the point here, just to wrap up this first idea. It is okay to be sad about what you have done if it's messed up your connection with God. If you've done something wrong, don't deny it. Share your grief, share your sorrow with God all around your behavior. God is not waiting for you to show your vulnerable side so that he can hit you where it hurts. It's not what's happening. Grief puts you on trajectory toward renewed and deeper friendship with God. Here's the second thing I want to say about grief, to share with you how healthy grieving can be. Grieving restores mental health. I use a 7-stage model of grief. I find it very helpful when I'm dealing with my clients. Here it is. I'm going to give it to you very quickly, and then I'm going to show you how I see it showing up in the psalm. Stage 1 is shock and denial. Stage 2 is pain and guilt. Stage 3 is anger and bargaining. Stage 3, depression. Stage 4, the upward turn. Stage 5, reconstruction, working through. And stage 6 is acceptance and hope. Before the psalm begins, it's possible that David had already gone through shock and denial. There's often a moment of adjustment, like the calm before the storm, where reality takes a moment to settle in and we're just getting prepared to respond to it. Stanza 1, where the psalm begins, is all about pain and guilt. When we initially experience loss, it's really, really painful, and it can make us feel guilty, as though we've done something wrong, or maybe actually we did do something wrong, and we feel that pain. In this first stanza, David really pours his heart out here. His pain goes so deep that he says he's feeling it in his bones. There's not a part of his experience that's not touched by the grief. Stanza 2 is all about anger and bargaining. Look at how creative David gets in his bargaining. He's like, God, listen, if I'm dead, who is there left to remember you? I can't praise you from the grave. He comes up with this very intelligent and convincing argument that in a world that is ruled by total logic, the world then should respond and restore back to what it was before this loss happened. And of course, the world is not dominated by our logic, and that doesn't happen. So stanza 3 then is all about depression. The bargaining doesn't work, and the anger doesn't regain the control that we need to restore things back to what they were. And so we're left with this total emptiness. There's not enough of David left to even cry. There's not enough of David left to even use his eyes to see the world we see in this stanza. He's locked inside himself, inside his loneliness, inside his hopelessness. But then there's stanza 4, which is the upward turn. It's not significant in that life is suddenly better, but it is significant in that there's a crack, there's a doorway, there's a slight sliver of light coming in that lets us know that there is hope beyond our current experience. It's when we stop looking behind us at what we've lost and we start glimpsing ahead of us, knowing that there's something still to come. It's a pivotal moment. David mentions that God has heard him. David mentions that he knows that God is eventually going to answer him. The world isn't yet a better place, but there's possibility that it can become a better place. The other stages of grief are outside of this psalm, but there's enough here for me to make a comment. Grief is a process, and it's a healthy process. Sometimes healthy things are very painful. Leaning into grief is what we need to do to bring ourselves back into our emotional comfort zone and feel healthy again. The longer we stay in denial, the longer it will take us to heal. The longer it takes us to touch the pain, the longer it takes us to heal from the pain. Grief can be so painful. And I am so sorry for your grief. I'm so sorry for my grief. If we allow ourselves to process grief, we come out of it heading toward healthier days, happier days, more hopeful days. If we don't allow ourselves to grieve, we get stuck in it. And then it can get complicated, like it's an infected kind of grief. And it becomes a block, and part of our life kind of stalls. And that's more horrible than the pain of grieving. Here's what I want to leave you with. If you've done something that you feel has hurt your connection with God, expressing grief may be a really great place for you to start, because it will lead you to deepening your connection with him. It will lead you towards understanding that God is a God of forgiveness and love if you would just return back to him. Or if you've had a loss, leaning into the grief, as painful as it is part of the process towards health. And it's okay to need help going through this. As a matter of fact, being alone is a horrible experience. Being alone usually doesn't help us to get healthier. So reach out and let someone walk through that grief with you. Okay, that's it from me to you for now. Would you please like? Would you please share? Would you please subscribe? Would you please ask for the link? Particularly if you could use somebody to walk with you through the grief, we're here. If you'd like to contribute financially, you can look down in the show notes to find the link in the description for community, creating community spaces that you can connect with others and also with God. See you next time.